Good day and welcome, my friends, back to another episode of ToTube. Let me just adjust the camera here. No gold digging video tonight, my friends. My apologies for that. Oh boy, you can already see my completed tier list. Aha. Woohoo. Um, yes, guys, I reviewed one of my earlier videos, or the last one I posted for the Darman gold digging content, and I thought to myself, I do think I felt like I came off as a bit obnoxious in it slightly. I do think a lot of things I said in there were quite funny, and I worried that I went a bit over the top though with some of the things that I said. And because of that, I just don't want to. I'm definitely going to continue the series. I mean, I'm hoping I made people laugh with said video. That's the intent. But yeah, I'm just going to take just a small step back from it, and we don't have much Darman content left to watch, but that pertaining to gold diggers. That is. Um, the well is running dry. But yeah, we're going to do something a bit different today, guys. We're just going to do a Skyrim tier list video. I hope none of you think I eat paint after I share my opinion, because I don't. I eat chips. Have you know, I dine on asbestos. I'm sorry. I'm just going to go over my opinions. I've already went through the trouble of filling out the chart because I've tried to record a video about this twice now, and after rewatching it, it was too painful for me to stomach. So I just didn't feel like undoing all my work and going through it all over again. So we're just going to start off, I think, from the bottom tier here. Actually, let me adjust my camera so you guys can see. There we go. Now, as you'll see here, I think we'll start off from Bitcoin tier. I do hope I'm not pissing off any investors. I myself am a fellow investor. That is a lie. I am yet to invest, though I am deeply interested in it. Please do not be offended. Here we have the Rose of Singween. Forgive me if I'm saying this wrong. You get this from the Daedric Prince of Debauchery when you encounter him in a bar. And the enchantment is to summon a Dremora Lord. Now, while this isn't a unique enchantment and no other staff has it, why it's at the bottom of Bitcoin tier is because the enchantment or the staff itself will diminish and inevitably disappear over time. So it's an enchantment that will inevitably work itself into desolation, which in my opinion, is a crappy enchantment. The second one is this axe that you get from Clavic's Vial. I'm sure many of you have seen it. If you've played in Skyrim, you've probably seen it come up on a tiny screen. It looks cool and everything, but it's actually pretty trash, and I don't even remember its name. I know one of the reasons why it's so terrible in particular is because its enchantment is just 30 additional points of stamina damage. Its overall damage is equivalent to that of a steel iron war axe. And it actually has a slower swing speed of the traditional axe, so it's just a terrible weapon all around. Because of that, it's the bottom of the barrel when it comes to, the tier list. Coming up here, we're at the bottom of C tier. I forget what this one's called as well, which really pisses me off because I remember before I stopped playing Skyrim, which wasn't all that long ago, I was using this a lot. I'm just going to call it the Staff of Chaos. I think this is the Daedric god Vermina's staff. I think she's the Daedric god of nightmares. You get this in what's that place on the riverside? It's right next to the crappy Dark Brotherhood sanctuary, or the crappy poorly hidden sanctuary. I don't remember. Morthal, I think. You go in there, an old temple of hers with her priestess. You go back in time. The quest is awesome, but the staff isn't that great. I think unlike a traditional staff, which requires a soul gem to charge, I think this one actually requires a soul gem as well. It does. This one requires a soul gem and actually, in order to function, you have to spend a lot of time around sleeping NPCs and use the staff on them to harvest their dreams. And I think if you do that twice, you get if you could do it, and I think you need to do 3 times to get three dreams equals 1 charge, I think. And you might say, well, with all this work that you're putting into it must be a great staff. It isn't. It's a trash staff. The damage that it does is not worth the effort at all. Mechanically is a horrible, horrible staff. It requires soul gems and dreams to to use. Or maybe I'm wrong here and it only requires dreams, in which case it gets slightly better, but it's still terrible, in my opinion. The next one is Savor's Hide. Saviors, Sarvor, I don't remember. You get this when doing a quest for the Daedric god Hircine, the god of werewolves and the hunt, god of the wild, really. In Falkreath, you encounter this werewolf who's in prison for killing a girl, not intentionally, of course. He lost control, and after following through with the quest, you're left with the decision, kind of like in Saw. You choose to either let him die and receive the reward, or save him. If you save him, you get this Ring of Hurrence, which is a much better item in my Hircine, which is a much better item in my opinion, or you get this Hive. The Hive itself isn't terrible. It's a nice looking item, and you get bonuses to your stamina and regeneration, I think, and you get 50% resistance to disease. This, in my opinion, what drags this item down is because its enchantments aren't all that great. If you're a werewolf, one of the enchantments is effectively useless to you because you're already immune to disease and poison. And forgive me if I'm wrong about this, but I don't think this item is usable with some of the effects that that you can gain in the light armor skill tree. If you complete the light armor skill tree in its whole, one of the effects is that if you wear a full set of leather armor or any light armor at all, you get like a bonus to your stamina regeneration. And because there's only one piece to the Savior's Hide, that's what I'm going to call it from now on, you can't really do that because, well, there's no way to continue it. I mean, there's no way to continue. I mean, there's no other pieces to make a full set. Maybe if you wear a bunch of fur armor, it does it. I don't know. I'm just going off of what I know. So please don't take my word on it for that. But I think with the reasons I presented earlier, its position is fair earned. C tier, we have the Skeleton Key. If we were counting the lore in this and not just the mechanical, capabilities of these items within the game, this thing would be up in non-C tier. It would be up in S tier. But because its capability and function is really just to serve as a non-breaking lockpick, I think it gets a C tier. By no means is the Skeleton Key a bad item. I just don't see its application to be all that great in the long term. It's a nice utility piece, in my opinion, but something that I think you'll find with most Daedric items is that the more you progress, the less useful they get, and this is kind of the case for the Skeleton Key. If you're a thief, the only way I see the Skeleton Key as being a overall just a useful thing is if you're RPing someone that doesn't pickpocket or doesn't lockpick. But I mean, if you have to do the Thieves Guild in order to get this key, so I'm assuming you're going to be lockpicking and pickpocketing to, if you're going to be doing the quest necessary to get this item. And if you are a master thief, or if you've done the Thieves Guild quest line, in which case you've definitely had to upgrade your lockpicking skills. I don't know how useful the Skeleton Key is really going to be, because if over time if you do get 100 lockpicking, and you get the final perk on the lockpicking tree, which is the ability to use lockpicks without breaking them, well, this Skeleton Key becomes effectively useless. Now, it looks good, don't get me wrong, and I won't deny that its immediate use early on in the game is definitely useful, because it's effectively giving you a perk effect that you otherwise have to grind for very early on in the game, but the perk effect itself isn't overly useful in my opinion. Lockpicking, or for me at least, was never that hard, and usually I had an abundance of lockpicks, so it didn't really matter how much broke. Of course, having this is nice, but I think its effect isn't all that grand, and eventually you will end up replacing it. And if it had another enchantment that allowed you to have a different endgame perk effect, then it might be higher up, but because it doesn't, and because of that, it doesn't, and because of that, it's where it is. Next is Namira's Ring. You get this in Markarth when you encounter a cannibal. This ring is it boosts your stats and your regeneration, and it also gives you the ability to cannibalize your victims. So if you're feeling like Hannibal Lecter and you want to get your Hannibal on, this is the way for you, my friend. Oh boy. Yeah, the ring isn't terrible. It does give you a nice little way of recovering your HP quickly after you finish eating. However, you could effectively achieve the same effect if you just waited like an hour, which would take only a matter of seconds. So from a mechanical standpoint, this ring isn't the best. It does give you some nice buffs and perks, like a bonus to your stats and regeneration, but which is very nice. But in my opinion, the Ring of Namira isn't the best, and there are better. You're probably off just enchanting a band rather than Namira's Ring. Even in like earlier game content, I guess this would be useful. The only reason why I would think you'd wear this ring is for the unique effect that it gives you, but because it doesn't serve all that great in terms of gameplay potential, or it's where it is. Next is Dawnbreaker. Dawnbreaker by no means is a terrible weapon in my opinion. It's just where it is, like what it is, that I think makes it so low. It puts it so low on the chart. It's purely for fighting the undead. All of its enchantments are purely for fighting the undead, which makes it great for fighting dragon priests. But when you're fighting bandits and dragons and anything that isn't the undead, well, Dawnbreaker isn't all that great. And even with its most of its setup to be the literal bane of undead, one of its enchantments is a master level restoration spell, which is great, and which is called the Bane of Undead. I still see that in my opinion, I still don't think it's the best weapon. It's cool, and it does have a fire enchantment, and when you're fighting, I guess, bandits and whatnot, I do think you have the potential to burn them, but it's only good, I think, for early and maybe early mid-game content or gameplay, and after a while it kind of begins to fall out of its level, in my opinion. You would think that with a master level spell as one of its enchantments, it would fare much better. But if I'm being honest with you, you're just better off finding a sword, getting the Fire Soul Steel enchantment and just the basic fire enchantment, putting that on a sword, and going to town to the undead, because that's probably going to be better. The Bane of Undead spell is nice and all, but it's actually not all that great, in my opinion. You're probably better off casting like Guardian Circle or something, but I mean, even then, a sword with 2 fire enchantments is with the fire and fiery soul trap enchantment is the way to go in terms of undead, and because of that, I think Dawnbreaker is just C tier level. Next one is Ring of Hircine. We mentioned this a bit earlier. Ring of Hircine is, in order to measure its value, we have to measure the value of a werewolf transformation, because that's what the ring is tied to. Werewolves, in my opinion, in Skyrim are great if someone wants, to be immune to disease and poison and have a nice little transformation without being a vampire, and taking on the weakness to the sun, because in my opinion, being a werewolf is just a nice buff to your character. The only drawback to being a werewolf is that you don't get this small little boost to your experience leveling if you're because there's this thing that you can do. If you rest 24 hours, you get this temporary boost to the amount of experience you get. And as a werewolf, you just don't get that because you have the restless sleep effect. But for a werewolf, this is great, because especially if you're a peeing one, because this removes one of the main drawbacks of being a werewolf, or one of the main effects that holds a werewolf back, which is, they can only transform once a day. But this ring, you can do it as many times as you want, and that's huge. So The effect itself is very, very useful, and the werewolf transformation for any character that just wants to get, poison and disease immunity without having to, be weak to the sun and not being able to regenerate in the daytime. I mean, in other words, not wanting to become a vampire or that improved your character in some way. This is great. And the werewolf transformation, even in high levels, it begins to kind of die down. I think more in at the end of mid game, and when you of course get Daedric armor and a Daedric sword, you're probably just better off staying in that form. But I still see the werewolf transformations as being a fun thing as being great, even in that stage, because there are some things because you can still launch your opponents with those powerful werewolf attacks, though you would probably do much more damage with the Daedric sword. There is actually a way, if you play as an orc berserker, I know, and you use the berserker rage and then you transform into a werewolf, you can amp up the damage of a werewolf's claws significantly, and I think there's this one way. I know that ESO posted a guide on it, so werewolves aren't all that bad. There are ways to make them viable in late game, and yeah, they're great, and because of that, I think the Ring of Hercene is great. Next, we have Voldrum. Voldrum is a great warhammer, and its enchantment is Stamina Drain, which is awesome because it effectively gives you almost infinite power attacking, or you can power attack as long as your enemy has stamina. You're going to be able to drain stamina from them and just continue power attacking. So many people say, "Oh, this if you have that, you can power attack infinitely." It's not exactly, but it's a very useful enchantment. Unfortunately, I think Voldrum is only B tier worthy because it only has one enchantment. That enchantment, while is definitely great, it really falls flat on its face when it comes to high tier level items. I think this Voldrum is probably great in early and kind of mid game, when you're transferring over to high, because by then you can probably start doubling up on enchantments, or maybe that's the end of mid game. Really, whenever you can find a warhammer with a stronger enchantment or create them as an enchanter, Voldrum really begins to fall out of use. Looks very cool though its overall practical gameplay, it's not that great. When you're able to produce greater weapons, though it's still a viable weapon overall, and it is very good. The next one is the Mask of Clavicus Vile. This is the good This is the good item that you can get, not this piece of garbage here. It increases your speech skill, and it also does a few other enchantments that I forget about. I rate it as being overall useful because its enchantments long term are useful to the player, at least in what it does, and it's a good armor piece. So I think it deserves the spot of B tier. And then we have the Mace of Molag Bal. Now the Mace of Molag Bal is a one-handed mace that you get in Markarth, in a quest called the House of Horrors. You follow a priest, you kill an old man who's also a priest, and you get the mace. Forgive me, I didn't give a lowdown on what Voldrum is. I don't think I did that for Dawnbringer either. I'm just going to skip them. The Mace of Molag Bal, why I think is better than Voldrum is because I think one-handed weapons, in my opinion, are slightly better than two-handed. It's a bit debatable, in my opinion, especially, and though I think the main reason as to why I'm just bumping it up over Voldrum is because it has an additional enchantment as opposed to Voldrum, which only has one. Molag Bal has the stamina stealing enchantment as well, and in addition to that, when you kill an enemy, you steal their soul. And you can also use them in conjunction with Spellbringer up here, so there's that. Yeah, I think Molag Bal overall his mace is better. And then we have the Ebony Blade. Now, you might be thinking, well, Tail, this seems like a contradiction. Didn't you just say that one-handed weapons are better? Well, there's a reason as to why I think the Ebony Blade is slightly better. The Ebony Blade, it's a bit odd, because it's a two-handed weapon, but it has the swinging speed of a one-handed weapon. And it has the damage of a two-handed weapon. So it's a bit up there in terms of power. It's great in that regard. And in addition to that, it has one of the most unique, in my opinion, one of the more powerful enchantments. Its life-draining ability is very cool, and it doesn't require soul gems at all. So this enchantment never diminishes, and the enchantment that it has is, well, one of the better ones I think that you can find on Daedric items. Um, a unique part about the enchantment is that in order to power it up to the max, you have to kill beloved NPCs. I know Nazim will be missed, but it's necessary to reach this weapon's full potential. So killing followers or people that you've done favors for will power this weapon up to its maximum. And once it's at that, it stays at that. Now on to A tier. Here we have the Ebony Mail. I think it's pretty self-explanatory why the Ebony Mail is here. After doing a quest for Boethia and killing her original champion, you get this very powerful piece of armor. Now, the armor itself kind of puts us in its enchantment, leaves us in the same situation of the Skeleton Key. Why I think the Skeleton Key is so, I'm sorry, what makes the Ebony Mail so interesting is because it gives us an effect that we would otherwise have to have maxed out one of our perk trees in order to obtain, which is the Sneak skill. At the end, at the very pinnacle of the Sneak skill tree, you get the ability to crouch and poison your enemies that surround you. And that's effectively what the Ebony Mail does. And in addition to that, it serves as a very, very sturdy, solid armor piece early on and into the mid-game. In fact, I can see you applying this even kind of bleeding over into endgame of your Skyrim playthrough. So Ebony Mail, I think, definitely deserved a spot. Moving on to Azura's Star. I think this is fairly self-explanatory. It's a soul gem that never breaks. For enchanters, this is an absolute must. It's great. The only downside is that it can't hold every kind of soul. It can hold every soul except for human souls, and that's why the Black Star is so much better, because it can hold any kind of soul that you want and it never breaks. Now we move on to our Sheogorath staff, the Wabbajack. The Wabbajack, let me tell you, is here primarily because of its ability to instant kill. Then there's 3 different ways on how the instant kill effect will take root. You either turn into a sweet roll, a pile of money, or ectoplasm with a bunch of money in it. It also has the option to turn you into a chicken, cow, or mud crab. Almost called you a mud cup there, my mistake. And if upon striking someone, they'll either they will an explosion of ice, fire, or lightning, kind of like the rune spell. It is effectively the rune spell, just immediately taking effect on whoever it is that you strike. It'll just immediately erupt from them. They won't die instantly, though. It's really because of the instant kill effect that the Wabbajack is here. The application of the instant kill effect is massive. And I'm going to go into a bit more detail with that when we go to Maroon's Razor, which is here because of its instant kill effect ability. Maroon's Razor can be upgraded like any other dagger, and in addition to that, its enchantment doesn't suck, which is why it's up here. The ability to instant kill your opponent, even if it's not consistent, is so useful from a gameplay perspective, the kind of things that you could do and the mechanics that you could milk to just immediately kill a boss is why it's up here, in my opinion. Anyone who's ever killed the Ebony Warrior in one strike with this weapon knows how satisfying it is. Or Karstag. It is, in my opinion, one of the better weapons in the game, and something because of how unique it is, something that will definitely you can still find use for even in the end of your playthrough. Unless you've killed all the hard bosses. Even still, though, I still think it's great. And here we have Spellbreaker. Spellbreaker is universally useful throughout all of your playthrough because it is better than any other shield that you will ever find in the game. Not only does the shield defend against classic attacks, and at a much higher rating than any other shield, but it also has the ability to defend you from spells. Upon using the shield, the shield will cast a ward that will defend you from any oncoming spells. In addition to that, the ward effect that the shield emits does not count as an enchantment slot, so you can still enchant the shield like you would be able to with any other spell, which is absolutely insane and makes this shield quite literally the best in the game, as you're effectively able to take on an impressive amount of physical defense while almost embodying immunity to spells. Or not immunity, but just strong defense against it, and able to pack on enchantments. So there's that. And we come to our final one, the Ogma Infinium. Now, the reason why the Ogma Infinium is here and not in the B tier, or bottom of A, probably B tier is probably where it would otherwise be, is because of its ability to be, because of its ability to kind of be like, because of its ability to get wanked. And I'll explain what that means. The Ogma Infinium, when you don't abuse its ability, is to upgrade a certain category of skills by 25 levels. If you choose the path of sorcery, the skills pertaining to magic as well as enchanting will improve by 25 levels. If you choose the one for warriors, all of the warrior skill trees, skill sets, as well as smithing, I think, will grow. And then the one for the thief, that's self-explanatory, like lockpicking, sneak, pickpocketing, you get the drift. I think speech increases as well there. But what makes this, and you might say, well, Teo, that seems like a nice bump, but that's not super useful, especially when you consider how the Ogma Infinia disappears after you use it. What makes it great, though, is if you're able to work around its disappearing effect. If you own a property and a bookshelf, there is something that you can do that will allow you to multiply and create multiple copies of the Ogma Infinium. And if you do this, you effectively gain access to one of to infinite leveling. So in a matter of minutes, after completing this little cheat, you could have yourself with 25 Ogma Infiniums, and you could probably start raising your level at an eccentric rate. Outside of this cheat, the only other form of leveling outside of this that I would say is super broken and super useful is the alteration glitch, which allows you to raise your level at another way to raise your level at an eccentrically high speed. But this one I think is a bit more useful than that because you're raising a bunch of skills overall very, very easily and very, very quickly. And guys, that is my opinion on the Daedric weapons. This was done much more effectively than my other video. The first time I recorded it was 50 minutes. The third time I recorded it was 38. This is 27. Yeah, well, anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and, if you did, I have to ask. I apologize for asking, but I must ask. Please like and subscribe. I am trying to grow, and forgive me, Bitcoin users. I'm sorry. Goodbye, everybody. I'm not really sorry.